All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, good morning, everyone. All right, so so today's class is a little bit different. It's on a Saturday, so let me quickly tell you guys how I like to run this class. So we are going to start the lecture. It's going to go until noon. At noon, we will take a lunch break. It's going to be for 45 minutes. So you'll come back at 12:45. Okay. And then we will resume the second part. Once you come back at 12:45, you guys are going to take a nice nap to my sweet voice. And then at 2 o'clock, I'm going to wake you guys up and be like, hey, the class is over. You guys can go home. Okay. So this is how today's class is going to go. And every Saturday one. Okay. I know it's kind of hard to concentrate when people come back at after lunch. I can actually see people like drooping after lunch. I'm like, the sad part is some of the more complicated concepts are after lunch. So that's when I lose people. Anyway, so that's how the class is. So noon, I'm going to talk. We'll be doing activities until 12 o'clock. 45 minutes lunch break. If you're not from around here, there are many nice restaurants over here. You can have lunch in class. Up to you guys. Okay. But I will start the class back at 12:45. Okay. Second thing, I hope everybody's GitLab issues and SSH keys and everything has been resolved. If not, recommended stay during lunch. You can bother me. I don't want to say because TAs are going to take lunch as well. Or stay after class. Today's class hours are going to be from 2 to 2:30. We'll be here. Make sure GitLab SSH keys are resolved. You are able to download every activity and everything. Okay. Today we are going to post the activities, but from next class, from next week, Tuesday, I'm going to expect everybody to get the new activity from GitLab and start working on it. I'm just going to announce, hey, we are working on activity number 4. Please go ahead and pull that activity and start working on it. Okay. Again, one of the reasons is I want you guys to get used to GitHub and Git and everything because this is one of the most used tools in any company. Okay. Um, so just a quick note, if you have SSH key correctly set up, it is not going to ask you a password ever. The point of SSH key is that you don't have to enter your password. SSH key, basically, if somebody read about it, it's a secured, a long key that is supposedly very hard to crack and kind of replaces your password thing. So if you're trying to clone a repository and it says enter your username, which is your email most probably, and then your password, this means your SSH key is not set up correctly. Okay, it shouldn't ask you that. The second thing that people are confusing is passphrase. Password and passphrase are different. When you were setting up the SSH key, it asks if you want to set up a passphrase. Okay, if you selected a passphrase, it is going to ask you for that passphrase every time you clone your repository. This is just an extra security step. Usually when I create SSH keys, I leave the passphrase empty. It is just one more extra thing that I need to remember, so I just keep it empty, press enter, enter. So it creates a SSH key for me without a passphrase. So it never asks me that passphrase, okay? But some of you must have entered the passphrase, so please read the error message and see what it is saying. If it is saying passphrase, this means not the password, not the username, the passphrase that you entered when you were creating SSH key. Okay. Again, if you created everything correctly, it should not ask you for your password. Okay. If it is, then this means your SSH key is not set up correctly. Okay. Is that clear? That's how SSH keys work. They kind of are replacement for actually entering your password. Okay. Again, if you have issues with GitLab, GitLab is more important. That requires an SSH key, so I'll make sure because I'm going to be posting activities. GitHub is your personal thing. You don't want it more secured. It's up to you guys. Okay, so that's up to you. Okay. All right. Any questions before we proceed? Everybody good? Okay. All right. So we completed our thing. We'll do a quick recap from our Tuesday and Thursday class, and then we will begin what we'll be looking at today. So today we'll be looking at some more CSS, some more little bit difficult concepts. So today's class is going to be probably the most difficult one till now, with the more difficult than Tuesdays and Thursday. Okay, why? We have looked at HTML. We have looked at some basic CSS. I'll do a quick recap, and after that, we'll be looking at some little bit in-depth CSS, some more complicated concepts when it comes to CSS. Okay. All right. So before we begin, let me see if there's a site. All right. So we talked about Git, GitHub, GitLab, HTML, CSS on Tuesday and Thursday. Okay. So let's see. Asusina, what do you think Git is? In your own words, what did you understand what Git is? Okay. Okay. So you're kind of close. The cloud thing that you're talking about, I understand what you're saying, right? So Git as a tool. Remember, I said Git, not GitHub or GitLab. What you're saying is those are more the cloud-based solutions that you're mentioning. What I'm asking is exactly the tool Git without the cloud thing. Like, what does Git help you with? How about that? Okay. What if I, what else? What does it help you? You have downloaded the repository, that's all good. What is the benefit that you're getting out of Git? Right, exactly. That's what Git is. So basically, Git is a version control tool which kind of keeps track of your files, what changes were made, and everything. Right. That's what Git is. All right. Excellent. Uh, Pick somebody from me from the bench ahead or table ahead of you. Right ahead. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, you answered, so you get to pick somebody. My next victim. So that it'll help us remember both of our names are very well because you guys are changing places. I'm like, I associate this person with this desk. Now I'm like, oh no, I don't know who that is. So just point it out. We'll find out what the name is. Esme? Esme? Did I say that right? Oh no, I haven't asked the question. All right. So Asusina explained what Git is. What is the difference between GitHub and GitLab? Oh, excellent. Wow. Yes, GitLab is for me, GitHub is for you guys. Now, why is that the case? I have no idea. I don't know why they picked two different products. They both serve the same purpose. But of course, the lesson, everything, the material is copyrighted by Trilogy, so I cannot upload anything on GitHub that they give me. They have given me GitLab, and this is a product they choose. I'm not sure why they choose two different products just to confuse people. I don't know why. You have the same capabilities in GitHub that GitLab does. It's just a different product. Okay, just understand. A lot of companies choose between one or the other. There are a few more. There's one called Git Kraken. That's actually local, like somebody from Phoenix. There's a company in Phoenix that actually built that. That's also quite popular. It's called Git Kraken. So these are different products, different cloud spaces that, as Susina was mentioning, that they provide. They will host your code. Okay, but behind the scene, Git is the tool that works. Okay. All right. Estimate. Pick some. Yes. Question. Tool. Yes. Git is a tool, and GitHub, GitLab, GitKraken are using that tool. What they are doing is they're providing you that server space, that cloud space where you can store your code. You need to store somewhere, right? And these guys are the ones who are providing. They're saying, "Hey, use our tool. You can store. We'll give you free space, this much, whatever things they're giving." But behind the scenes, exact same tool, exact same commands, you can run the same Git clone on GitHub, GitKraken, GitLab, or any other product. They both are same. Okay. Any other questions about Git? Okay, Esma, you can pick somebody from your left table. Okay. Did he tell you your name? I also forgot actually, so I was like trying to listen. Does Ethan remember? Cody. But there are like two or three Codys. Are you Cody H? What? Yes. Cody H. Okay, so I'm going to call you Cody H. Yeah, I think there's one more Cody or two more.
Well, that seems Hoover, if that's easier. A lot of people call me Hoover.
Oh,
Yeah.
whatever you offer. Hoover. Okay. All right, that's a nicer one. There you go. All right, Hoover. All right. What is the first? So we talked about Git, GitHub, GitLab. Let's suppose you have a Git project on GitHub. What's the first thing you would do if you want to use Git?
Create a repository.
Excellent, excellent. So we are going to create a repository on the choice of our cloud provider. In this case, it's GitHub. So we're going to create a repository on GitHub. Okay, what's the next step?
Then we're going to clone it to our local drive.
Excellent. So we are going to go ahead and what does cloning mean? What is it doing?
Making a copy.
Okay. So where is it bringing the copy from?
GitHub.
From GitHub. So we have created a repository on GitHub. It's going to go ahead and when you clone it, it's going to bring that copy over. And how many times do I need to clone?
Just once.
Just once, right? If you go ahead and delete the local copy, then you'll have to clone it again. But clone is a one-time operation. Once you have the repository, you don't have to do it again. Okay. Excellent. You can pick somebody from the front table. Shuen. Yes. Okay. So, as Hoover was saying, we have cloned the repository. Okay, now I have the copy local. What's the next step? What do I do now?
Open it up.
Okay.
Visual Studio, you can do code, space, period.
Okay, excellent. So I opened it up. I made some changes. Okay, what's that? Now I'm ready to complete it.
Git add, space, period.
Okay, excellent. What does git add do?
You're adding the changes to. You're just adding the changes.
Yeah. Okay. What's the next step? Let's do the next step. Commit it. Okay. So excellent. So what's the difference between add and commit?
You're staging your edits or your changes.
Okay, excellent. So what Shun is saying is correct. So when you do an add, let's suppose when you clone the repository, you didn't have any file. Then remember we made an index.html and CSS and everything. Git has no idea what you're doing. So you need to add it. So you are trying to give the control to Git and you're telling Git that, hey, there's a new file that I added or there are some code changes that I added. I want you to keep track of it. Remember, Git keeps track of not only the files, every single line of code. Okay, but you need to give the permission. You need to tell Git that please go ahead and keep track of these files. So add is that operation that Git takes control and Git is like, okay, I'm now going to keep track of these things. Once you are done with all your changes, you do a commit. Commit is basically preparation for a push. You are saying, okay, I'm done with my changes. I'm ready to send these changes back to GitHub. Okay, so you do a commit and then you add a message so that whoever reads your commit can understand what you were trying to do. Yes?
So you can add whatever files you want to commit before you even do all the changes or your work. Because it'll keep track of what you added.
So the process would be you would add the files first. Add means that you would actually create a file, like type it in and everything. And then when you run the git add command, it's going to start keeping track of those files. Yeah, that will be the process. So we'll have to create the file first and then run the git add command. Okay? Excellent. Yes?
There's only keep track of it on your computer, right?
Yes. Excellent.
So
Yes. Nobody else has no idea. Right, right. So all of these changes, Git is creating that history on your local computer. Nobody has no idea. And what do you think when somebody is going to get an idea what is going on? What do we have to do to make that happen?
You gotta push it.
Excellent. Right? So we need to do a push. Once we have add, commit, unless you do a push, those changes are still local. If your computer goes down, you lose that code, everything is local. Nothing has been pushed. Okay? So when yeah. Unless you do a push.
When you save
No.
a file on your hard drive, if
Yeah.
you do an add but you haven't pushed it, it's
Yes.
all lost.
It's all lost.
Except the file that's saved on your hard drive.
Oh, no, no. So what I meant was that unless if you do a add and a commit, the file is still local. So if you lose your computer, that file is lost. Unless you do a push, that's when it's saved on the cloud, saved on GitHub. If you lose your computer, that's okay. You can download it again, start working on it. Okay. So you need to do a push. That's when Git is going to create all the histories, all the versions, and keep track what changes you did. Then everybody can see it on your public GitHub repo. Okay. Yes.
Can I clarify this a little bit?
Yes.
It
Yes.
seems to me if you got a folder that you clone down from Git, everything on that top folder down is always being tracked by Git. It doesn't actually get,
yeah.
those changes don't get pushed until you add it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it's always being somehow tracked
Well, so
locally.
locally and tracked, as in the sense that Git is making an assumption that eventually you're going to tell them to track it,
Yeah.
right? Not to get too complicated, you when you do a git add space dot, it is going to track every single file. At some point, when we get to a little bit more bigger projects, you would be like, oh, I don't want this file to be tracked. So you would actually exclude this file, and Git is going to never upload it, never think about it, ignore it.
And that's the second part. I heard Schwing say he's saying Git add space dot.
Yes.
The difference between that and without the dot is what?
There's no, I don't think there's without the dot. The dot just means that every single file has to be tracked. The other option would be you actually mention each file that needs to be tracked. That's what it is, yeah. Add, I don't think add does any, it's probably going to ask you, it's going to give you an error saying two less arguments or something that you need to tell what you're trying to do. So space dot basically means track every single file. Right now that's okay because we don't have a lot of code and we want every single file. For example, our index and CSS and everything. Okay. Yes.
And I noticed on GitHub when you're in a repository, there's an upload file tab in the top right somewhere. What's the difference
In
between
GitHub,
yeah. What's the difference between uploading a file like through the browser on GitHub
let's
and actually
see.
pushing it?
So if I go to my awesome project here, okay,
Upload file, something.
this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, this is something that is coming from GitHub, right? This is a GitHub feature. It's not like really Git. So what these guys are saying is, let's suppose I have this in my repo. I'm the only one working on it. I can bypass those things, and maybe I just need to make a quick change. I can upload some files and kind of don't have to go through that process. Usually, in your when you're working on it, these kind of options are they are available but nobody uses it, and the reason is because your code has to go through review and everything. Somebody directly modifying this is looked down upon. But yes, for example, this is my repo, nobody else is working on it. I just want to do a quick thing. I can use this option and upload some files and it will still work. Yeah,
So
that's
you-
why this is.
So you would want to copy. So you say you already have the file made. You would want to copy that file in Git Bash, like when you're in your master directory, then push it.
Yeah, the whole process. You will have to do the whole process. Copy it over into your folder, do a git add, git commit, write a message, then do a push. Yes, yes. That's the process it has to. These are some shortcuts, and you will see GitLab might have it, might not have it. GitKraken might have it, might not have it. This is the UI that is coming from Microsoft, so they are giving you new features. That's all it is.
Just think about it like flipping the process, right? So right now we're creating things locally first and then pushing them to GitHub. This allows, GitHub says, oh, hey, you can create a file here, but then you're reversing the process. You have to pull those changes that you created first, So just get in the habit of creating everything locally first and pushing it to GitHub.
Yeah. So at this point, I would highly recommend don't worry about creating new file, upload file, these options. With more experience and everything, you will come to know what's a good time to use it. For now, yes, use those 4 or 5 commands. Okay.
You mean, except for the very beginning, right, the first repository.
Well, you're gonna clone.
Right, bring it down, and then you're creating all your files.
Okay. Next, any other questions on Git, GitHub, GitLab? Everybody clear? Okay. All right. So we started with CSS. We looked at CSS. This is an open-ended question. Does anybody remember the 3 ways we can include CSS in our HTML? All right. All right. Excellent. So internal, external, and inline. And what is my preferred way? External. Okay, that's what we'll be coding. Okay, so we'll start with some CSS. Just a quick recap. Remember, there are three other ways. These are the ways how you would include the CSS, right? Um, how do you hook CSS into your HTML? Yes.
To use the external, you gotta use the link,
Mm-hmm.
rel, roles, house.
Excellent.
And give the directory where that
Right, you guys hear? So if you're using external, you need to basically give a path where your file is. Okay. All right. Now, what are the three ways that we can style our HTML? It's kind of a little bit more confusing intentionally if somebody wants to clarify. So what I'm asking is, what are the? We actually looked at two ways, and I'll show you the third way. Yes, Sean.
No, I guess no. When you said 2 days, I guess I
Okay, what were you saying?
I thought you were just saying like body, the ID, and the class.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So the three ways are what Shivain is mentioning. The first one is called a element selector. So you select a HTML element and you style that element. All right. For example, I pick a H1. What is the disadvantage? The thing is, if you style in H1, it's going to style every single H1 that is in your HTML. Okay. The second way that we looked was the class selector, where you're going to put a class and then you can use that as your CSS. The third way is using an ID. And I'll go through all three of them. I'll quickly code. I'll create a sample file and we'll go through all three of them. Okay? So that's what we'll start with. And then we will look at some other concepts. So let's do a quick recap. I'm going to create a HTML file. I'm going to add a CSS and then we will look at all three ways to add that CSS. Okay, so I have again, just look at it. You don't have to follow through. There's a whole activity, and we'll go through that activity. Okay. So let me call this folder HTML CSS example, and I'm going to create a quick HTML file, and then I will create my CSS file as well, and I will call it styles.css. Okay. And then in my index, I will quickly create a skeleton or basic, and I will say HTML CSS example. Okay, and then I'm going to include my CSS. It's empty right now, but I will still include. I'm going to talk about these paths and everything in a minute. So because this is outside, I can move this inside this folder. File. I'm going to format this. So this is how every coding, when I'm doing HTML, CSS, this is how I start. You saw I created a stubbed out, everything doesn't do anything, just created index HTML, my CSS, linked my CSS, both are empty. Okay, there's nothing and there's nothing going on over here. Okay, it's simple. So that's the version I'll be starting everything. And I would highly recommend that you guys also do the same thing. Yes.
You can modify your image, right?
Modify what?
You can modify your image. So if you wanted to add that link, you can add that link and just like that's a making
Oh, create your own shortcut?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, you can do it. If you can figure out in Visual Studio, yeah, you can do it. Yeah. But that's the default one, so yeah. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to create a quick. Let's create some quick headings so that those show up. So I'll say let's create some Avengers. And it's free. Okay, no CSS, nothing, just three simple H1s. So let's go ahead and test our code. I'm going to go ahead and run this to make sure these show up before I start running anything else. So this should show up over here. Okay, so it looks like this is working, so that's good. And the next step would be to go to our CSS. keep it over here. Okay, so we'll start with the first one. The first one was element selector. So element selector means that you are styling elements. So these would be your existing HTML elements. Okay, these are not any custom elements. These are nothing. These has to be the ones that exist in HTML documentation. Okay, so you will see there's no dot, there's no hash, there's nothing. This is an indication that this is a valid HTML element. Okay, and it exists. All right, so I will go ahead and let's add a simple CSS. Let's add a blue, and this should take effect. And there's my CSS. Okay, so this is the first way, and this is called element selected. Okay, the second way to, yes. They use background. So if you look at these properties, so background has all of these properties. If you just use background, basically you have availability to all these after the dash one, and you would add more properties by adding a space. That's what, it's just a shortcut. Okay, so for example, if I just did background, right, I could add a color, and then I could also add an image in the same. I could say, you see it's giving me more options, fixed, um, color. So all of these are coming together. So it's going to find those properties and assign them to it. That's the only thing. So, but we'll come back to our color option and do this. Okay, so that's the first way. The second way is using the class selector. Okay, what does that mean? Your class selector start with a dot, and then you can put any name you want. Don't have spaces in the name. You can do a underscore or dash, right? For example, I'm going to create a CSS class called Iron Man, and I'm going to put some CSS properties in this class. For example, we'll use the same background color. Let's make it red. Okay. Again, this way is called CS class selector. Okay. How do we use this in our HTML? Inside your tag, your HTML tag, you have a property called class, and this is the reason that property exists. You can mention the class that you just created in your CSS. For example, the class that I want to use over here is called Iron Man, Iron Dash Man. So I'm going to mention this class over here, and this should take effect, and this should come up as red. Okay. Please note, when you are creating a class in CSS, starts with a dot. When you are using it, there's no dot or anything. It's just the name of the class. Okay? Yes.
Sometimes you'll see, like, for instance, H2 dot Iron Man.
Yeah.
Is that just a little bit more specific?
Yes.
So let's say a couple elements
Yes.
of the same class.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, again, if this is going to confuse you, please don't listen to this. But since he's asking, it's a little bit more trickier. It just means it's more specific. Then it's going to look for an H2 element, and within that H2 element, there should be a child which has this class. It has to be embedded. That's what it means. It's kind of hierarchy. Okay. All right. The last one is called ID selector. Okay. If you want to create an ID selector, it starts with a hash. Okay, hash, and then just the name, whatever you want to give your name, custom name, just like your class over here. Okay, so let's suppose I'm going to create a ID class, and let's give it a background color. So okay, so this is the third way that you can create, and this is called ID selector. Okay, how do we use this? You will go over here. When we were using class selectors, we used the attribute called class. In this case, we are going to use the attribute ID. Okay, so it's going to be ID, and it is going to be the same name that you have in your CSS. Okay. Again, please note that there is no hash or anything. It's just the name of this. Okay. Yes.
What's the difference between class and
Excellent. I was going to ask. I was just going to say somebody going to ask what is the difference between class and ID. What do you think is the difference? Let's take a guess. Why do I need these two? Just a guess. What is ID? What do you think ID is? What does ID mean?
like the name?
Okay. ID stands for identifier. Okay. So how many IDs can you have with the same name? One. I mean, technically you can have one. That's the purpose of an ID. That it has to have an identifying feature, a definite short way that this is you can identify. Okay. So, how many IDs are you going to have in your HTML with this name? One. Now, again, HTML is not like a compiled language, doesn't do error checking. You can start reusing it. It's going to not give you the same results, going to get confused. But technically, there should only be one ID in your whole HTML with the same name. If you want to create another element, you have to give it a new ID. Okay? Hold on, let me complete this. Okay? So the difference is this class is reusable. I can create another um, let's say another Avenger, and I can use the same class and they will have the same CSS which I just created. Okay? So same color, same everything. Okay? With ID, it is specific. Can you use it? Yes. Don't use it. It kind of defeats the purpose of an ID. Okay? The ID is that this CSS over here is only and only specific to this line, and nobody else should be using that CSS. It's very specific. Yes. Question? Okay. Yes.
For me, it's like ID is just for one.
Yes, it is only for just one. Yes. So if you are tempted to use the style attribute over here and then write the whole style because that's only applicable to that piece, I would suggest instead of that use an ID and put your still your CSS over here. Okay, instead of using the style. Yes, Bob.
So I have a question. Let's say I want to do something similar to the let's say like the first one. Do I have to clarify or I can just put on like the name that I want to put and get the specific color?
So these are you have to create them. These are all custom ones. And where are we creating them? We are creating them over here. So if you want the same color red for some reason, okay, you can keep reusing this class, yes. So it will get the same one, okay. Now what is going to happen? Let's suppose I change this color to a different one. What is going to happen? Any HTML element that is using this class will get the change exactly like this.
No, I understand that part.
Okay.
That selector, I'm talking about the element selector, the first color that we just Captain America.
Yes.
Like, let's say if I want to use that same color again, as Captain America, should I put
Yes.
this background color later?
Yes. So yeah, you cannot use it. It only applies to the H1 element. So you have to put it inside an H1 element. So remember for H2, it doesn't change the color. Why? Because the blue color is only for H1. So example, if you create another H1, then this is going to get the same color as Captain America.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because the element selected H1 is same. Yes. Yes.
Is there like a hierarchy too?
Yes. Yes. Excellent. So, the question, well, before I go into more detail, any other questions? Does everybody understand the three ways that selectors are used? Okay, excellent. So, Denzel is asking if there's an hierarchy. Basically, he's asking if there's a preference, like what element selector takes precedence. Okay, so ID is the most takes the most precedence. What does this mean? This means that if you have an H1 tag and you have, let's suppose, change this to H1. Okay. So what is my H1? H1 has a style, right? And it has a background of blue. If you go back over here, I have an element selector H1 and it is selecting as blue. Now I change the H1, the element tag for Black Widow to H1. It should get the color blue, but it is not going to get the color blue. It is still yellow. Why? Because I have an ID, okay, and it is going to go ahead and look for this ID and then put this color. So the ID always takes the precedence over any of the other two selectors, okay. In the hierarchy, the second option is class. Class is going to take precedence over the HTML element, okay. So ID first, then class, and then the element selector. So if you have all three of them in your code, you should only have two, either class and the element or ID or the element. So what is going to happen is it is going to take the changes for ID first, and then it's going to ignore everything else. If you have a class, it's going to take changes for the class and ignore the element selector. Yes.
So is it precedence if you styled it
In what?
if you styled it inside the
Yes, it's going to take the inline one. Are you talking about inline? Yes, it's going to take. I think it's going to take the inline one. Yeah. So what he's saying is, if I put a style tag over there, is it going to? Well, let's try it out. So for example, so tell me what you're saying. So I remove the ID over here,
I think it's
okay, and then add style, and then say background color to aqua. Okay. So the style, the inline is going to take precedence over everything. So the H1, the element selector is the least precedence, so it's going to come to the last part. Yes.
right. You know,
Oh, that was a question. So let's try this out. So I have a style and then ID. What was ID? What? Uh, does this look right? Okay. What do you guys see? What do you guys think is happening? Right? So the inline is taking precedence over everything else. Okay. So let's remove this and forget that this ever happened over here. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, these are the three ones. Again, I highly recommend. These are all good questions. Be curious and try. Hey, what if I do this and see what happens? That's how I have learned. And okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens. Try this. Keep trying. See what it is, how this is working. Once you try it, if you have confusion, we can discuss it. But there are a lot more things you can do with this just to make sure your understanding is correct. Um, you're not going to destroy your code. Nothing is going to happen. We can always go back to that code. Okay, people are afraid. Oh, if I change this, everything it's not working. Don't worry. We can figure it out. It's not a big deal. Okay. Yes. What is it? Okay. All right. So these are the three things. The next thing you will have noticed that when we were using external CSS, I have a path over here. Okay. So the path that I over here is called relative path. It's called relative path. Okay. All your code, whether it is CSS or JavaScript or anything that you are putting a path has to be a relative path. Okay. Please never put your actual path of the file on your computer. For example, C colon slash, well, this is a Mac, so I don't have a C, but just to give you an idea, desktop something slash, this is my project, and within my project, I have a HTML, and then I have my CSS. Okay. Is this path correct? It is correct, right? You on your desktop, on your Windows machine, you actually do have the correct path and you have a style.css. But what is going to happen? Where is your website going to run? Is it going to run on your local machine? No. It is going to be run on a browser on somebody else's machine. Do they have this path on their machine? No, they won't. what is going to happen? Any images or their styles, nothing is going to load. The only thing they will see is a blocks or HTML, simple, very bad experience. Okay, so this means you are kind of hard coding this path. This is not how it works. Okay, so make sure even if you have images that are inside the folder over here somewhere, all of them should have a relative path. None of them should have this C colon, or if you're on Mac, slash user slash desktop or whatever the location is. It is always going to be relative path, and relative to what? Relative is something you need a point, right? So when I say relative path, you should be like, well, what is it relative to? It is relative to the folder that you're working on, this folder. HTML dash CSS dash example, all of these paths are going to be created based on this folder over here. Okay, what does this mean? This means I'm trying to find a file called styles.css in my folder, this folder. Where is that file? That file is on the same path as my HTML. They both are on the same path, right? They both are on the same hierarchy. They both are inside this folder on the same path. Okay? If the file is on the same path, you would say dot slash, just one dot slash, and then style.css. Okay? One dot and slash basically is telling the code that the file exists on the same hierarchy, it's on the same level as this file. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, once you are doing relative path, Visual Studio is super nice. If you do this and your file doesn't show up, this means it's not on this path. There's something wrong over here. Okay, Visual Studio, I have never had any experience where they will give you the wrong path. If the path doesn't show up over here, that's an indication that something is wrong. Okay, just make a note of that. So your file is not on the correct path. For example, I don't know if somebody caught on that. I made a mistake when I started this, and my styles were on a different path, and I'll show you that again. Yes, Deanne.
I just want to visit how this will show that you're on the right path.
So when you do dot slash, you will see that a menu is going to pop up giving me options. If I do dot slash, you see it shows me these two things.
Okay. All right.
If it does not show you this, again, this is not necessary, but I take it as a sanity check. If Visual Studio is not able to find it, I trust Visual Studio, so I'm like, okay, I'm doing something wrong.
Okay.
If you don't see this menu, you don't see your file, it's probably something I'm doing wrong. And this is what I did initially. So my styles were actually outside this folder. Oh, now I can move it. Let's move it here. Let's do this. I'm going to copy this code. Probably the easiest. Paste it here. I'm just setting up, so don't worry if you. Let's see. Okay. So what is happening now? I have a folder HTML CSS example, and my styles or CSS is actually outside the folder. It's at the wrong position. It should be inside the folder. Okay. This is what I did when I started the example. Now, how did I recognize it? Because I wasn't looking over here. When I did a dot slash, the styles never showed up. And that's what told me that, okay, something is wrong. If you do a dot slash, you see my style doesn't show up. Again, why doesn't it show up? Dot slash means that the file that you're looking for is inside this folder. Show me all the files that are inside that folder. That's what it is. In what folder? Wherever my index.html file is. So my HTML file is inside HTML CSS example folder. So when I do a dot slash, it is going to show me all the files in that folder. I don't have styles, so it doesn't show up. So what do? I have to move this style inside it. Okay. And now if I do a dot slash, it shows me I have two files in that folder, and this is the one I want. That's the first thing. Okay. Now, this is not the, we only have two files. So what is going to happen is usually if you have some experience or you have seen HTML code, you will see a folder called assets, right? I don't know if you have seen it. Usually people create a folder called assets, and then they put their JavaScript and CSS file inside this folder over here. Okay, so you will have a project folder, main folder, and then you're going to have an HTML file, and then you are going to have an assets folder, and you have a style.css inside that folder. Okay. Now, when I do a dot slash, should it tell me? Should it give me an option for styles.css? It should not. Why? On this path, I have a folder and a file. I don't have any CSS file over here. Okay, so if you do dot slash, it is going to say there is a folder, assets, and index.html. That's okay. So I'm going to type in assets, and then it's going to give me an option style.css. Okay, so what is it saying? That on my current folder, there is another folder assets, and within that assets, I have my CSS file. Now, if I go back to my web page, it should still show me the correct colors. Yes.
So within that folder, should you also store images? So
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll come back. So assets, basically, why is it called assets? This is the folder that holds your JavaScript files, your CSS file, your images. Those are assets that your website is using. Again, this is a naming convention that people use. You don't have to use it. The point of showing me over here is that how do you navigate to the correct CSS file if it is inside a folder? Okay. Yes.
Was the dot slash required when you first create an application path?
It is good question. It is not required, but what I have noticed is when you upload it to GitHub, um, it will work locally without even this thing. If I remove this, this is still going to work. What I have noticed is when people upload without the dot slash, GitHub for some reason is not able to navigate to that folder and gives you an errors. And then people are, well, my image is not showing up. In my debugging process, what I have found out is if you put a dot slash, suddenly your images are going to show up. So what I do is I always put a dot slash if I'm trying to get to that folder, just to be sure. But yes, it will work without that also. It's something to do. I don't know how GitHub caches the result or does something. Usually this is a quick fix. Yes.
So you're saying that if I don't put a dot and a slash, GitHub might not recognize it.
Might not. Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about GitHub deploying and everything in next week. For this week, you won't see anything because we are not deploying anything. By deployment, I mean that right now you're going to submit a homework with a GitHub link, and that's a link to your code. But eventually, I'm going to show you can host for free the whole website, and you can share it, and everybody can actually access your website, and it's free on GitHub. We'll do that next week when we have more projects, when you have actually submitted a homework and there is something to deploy. But in that case, when you deploy something, what is going to happen on the browser? It tries to find this file. For some reason, I have noticed that if you don't put a dot slash, GitHub doesn't recognize it. So it's just safe to start off with it. Okay, what will happen? You will spend like 2 hours on this simple issue. You ask somebody or TAs, and they'll say, "Oh, just put a dot slash," and you'll be like, "What? That was it? I can't believe it." So yeah, so that's why I included. That's why. Okay. Now, the other thing you will see is if you have more assets, let's suppose what Denzel was saying, images and CSS and JavaScript, you'll have more folders inside it. So what people usually do is this try to separate it out. If you are even more OCD like me, they have different folders. So they have a CSS folder, and then they have a JavaScript folder, and then they have a images folder. That's also convention. But now what has happened? This is not valid anymore, right? If I go back where you see my CSS went, why? Because styles is actually inside a further folder. So how do you get to it? You will say dot slash assets, CSS, style.css. Now it is going to work. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Yes, story. Again, if your website is smaller, usually you will have for now until your project one you will just be using one css file, a style.css, and you're going to put everything over here. The reason is you won't have a lot of css, but yes, in a project, in a production level, there are a lot more css files, just one, other than just this one. Oh, I like that thought. Yes, yes. It does some when it gets too big. That's when the time comes. But till now, you won't actually run into that issue. But if you have too much code in the CSS file, then you will see people are going to create different files and they are going to name it. Maybe this is the style for button, so they will say button.css or like a footer or a header.css, and all the CSS for the header is going to go over here. Yes, yes. For now, it's okay, but yes, that's the convention. Yes.
But you just add separate links.
Yes. Yeah. 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 We'll come to that as well. Yes.
You don't want to put a,
What is it?
you don't want to put the index HTML inside of another folder.
Ah, good question. Let's do that. What happened? Usually, it's not. So the naming convention index means that this is the first file, this is the first page that has to show up on your web page. That's why I call it index. This is the first one. Then you will have some more pages, such as, let's suppose you're creating a student bio. You have a contacts page, you have a home page, you have an about page. So all of those pages are going to be separate HTML files. Okay, we won't create one right now, but in that case, those files would be in a different folder. Okay, so how do you navigate from that? So let's make it a little bit more complicated. So let's do this. I'm going to pull styles back out over here on my root folder. I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to do something weird. I'm going to create a HTML folder and move my HTML file inside it. Okay. Again, it's usually index is not inside a folder. You will have more files, but I want to show you how do you navigate to styles. Now, what is going to happen if you open up this one? Okay, this is wrong, right? The path is wrong. The problem is, remember, it is a relative path. What it is relative to, it is relative to this index file. Everything is based on where this file exists. Okay. Now, if I want to get to my CSS, what do I have to do? Okay, so yes, I have to navigate one level up and then get my CSS. Remember the CD and everything? How do you go one level up? Dot dot. So you need two dots. So in my file, I'm going to say dot dot slash. You will see it's going to tell me, oh, there's a folder called HTML and style.css, and you can put this over here. Okay, dot dot basically means that I need to, my CSS is actually outside, so I have to go one level up to my HTML folder, and then I will find my CSS. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and read on this. The reason is I changed my folder. So if you see the URL, it is looking for HTML CSS example slash index, but it's now inside a folder, so that's why I can't find it. So we'll just read on this. And there's mine. And now I have my HTML over here now. Okay. We can make it even more complicated. We can add our assets back, and then put this over here. Now what happens? What would be the path? I still have to go one level up, but then I have to go inside my assets folder and then find the CSS file, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this is how you would navigate. Usually from your index file, you don't need a dot dot. Usually if it's on the root file, but you will need this. Eventually you will see if you have another page inside a folder and you're trying to get to an image that's also on the root file. Just remember relative path. If you want to go level up, it is going to be dot dot slash. Okay, and then you can keep going if it is multiple level up, so you can keep typing. You can say dot dot slash one level. If you want to go another level up, dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash, keep going however many levels you want to go to. Okay, wherever your file is. I hope it stops over here at most, or over here, but I don't know how you guys are going to change your code, but that's how it will be. So let me bring this back up over here, and I didn't want this folder, and then we'll fix this. Oh no, did I delete the wrong one? No. There's my link, assets and style. Okay, we'll make sure this runs. Um, all right, any questions on relative path? All right. Okay, good. All right, so we have an activity number 7, that is called relative paths. Um, Ethan or Kevin, would you slack it out? So they are going to slack out that activity. I will open the README file. Basically, it has multiple folders. You need to correct the HTML and find the correct asset folder. Okay, you don't have to worry about any HTML, CSS. You just need to make sure that the path is correct and your page renders correctly. You will have question marks. I think it says question, and there are 4, 5, I think. So for example, the first one looks like this. Okay, and there is a CSS file missing, so you need to find the correct path and then put it over here. The folder already has the CSS file, so no modification about the CSS file. The activity is just filling this out. But I would encourage you guys to look at the CSS, look at the HTML, just to get an idea how this has been coded later on, uh, just to get an idea what's going on.
If you already found the curriculum repo, then you don't need to use the one in Slack. You can just copy over the activity from the over to the folder, which hopefully everyone. I would I don't know how you got there, but I know that's not what you. Sorry.
Some more time.
So go back to the side here. We're doing exactly. So watch point up that section.
I mean, I think this guy is great. Go to like the settings option of the mod, so get live on the there's like an option that's kind of.
So he did laugh. So what are you supposed to do? So you know back in there.
I like it because I can change the comments.
So yeah, so you want to
Yes, I remember like like online.
so let's see how long
I used to
Yeah. Now we actually
I'm not trying to
yeah, that's our I'm gonna open up everything so everything's here. You see this is the problem. You just want to fix it. So the only thing we'll have to do is but I don't know because I don't know Max.
yeah, so like
Yeah, so each activity. And you'll see like within that folder how the CSS is moving to a different folder. So you have to make that happen. I mean, for the pathway, it's easier for me to so there is no color,
Right, so you are
so I learned the hard way. If it wasn't right, I'd go back and look at it. Like it's just in plain text. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I mean, that's not pretty. That's not
Yeah.
so you can see this now you can so you really put in not necessarily organize that in
Yeah. So when I made so GitLab, I cloned it everything, loaded it into my user profile, made a copy, moved it to another file. But why do you see saying masters?
That's okay. So there's a hidden file. If you say show hidden file, you will see there's a file called but nothing is. It just if you delete that file, that master.
Okay, because I was just like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's not downloading. If you make a
Sorry.
copy,
Okay, it's fine. Say that.
Yeah.
So I was just
if you this bottom, you do show hidden file,
okay.
and you will see a dot zip file over there that says deleted.
From all the copy ones that I make.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, don't remove it from that. You want to do it. Yeah, so
I know. I was like.
But on the very bottom, so yeah, so you see my file that is to the that's the file you're working on. Where's the attachment? Right, where is that in relation to this thing? You don't need to open. Where is it? Yeah, exactly. Right. In other words, there is a yeah. in the same location. They already did. Like I said, it's relative to business finance, so it's in the same place. You same place. No, the neighborhood file is there. So, that's the neighborhood file. Yeah, so if you just go drop slash, this is. You just hope the folder, you can hold it all over. Okay. Yep.
But no,
You don't say that.
remember like in the
Yes, but
you know, and like all of them said,
So whatever. I'm trying to get that. GitHub. So you will have to create a repository on your GitHub. GitLab you can if you want, yeah, you can just private.
I think it's more just like I think that was the hard part for me, like realizing what I'm doing. I see a bunch of files.
So, in the first one, it's in the same folder. The second one, it's in the same folder. So, right, yeah, this yeah, that means it's in this asset. HTML is not in that asset. So you need to update this to actually point to style CSS in the asset. You like to have it. No, you've already got the doc, so you need to add folder. What's the name of the folder? Yep, so put that in front of style. After the style, it's an access. Slash. Now you've got folder and then the file. That's it for that. Yeah. Okay. So here's the file. It is your right. How many levels do you have? From HTML, how many levels do you have? It'll tell you right. It'll tell you you're having or else so these are files you just so every day yeah, so yeah, it's in the same folder as the HTML. So that's so. Why do that? So what are you trying to do? So if you try to find like so this indicates that you have to and that makes
So you have to see people going I look nobody else. So it's just kind of locked up. Okay. Okay. Oh, no.
Hey Daniel, instead of researching something, I'll just ask you a question.
Yeah.
It's dirty.
Yeah.
As far as getting with a tutor, do I need to go through bootcamp spots
Yes.
to do that? Okay.
Yes.
Not just
On the
directly.
help.
Yeah.
No, directly you can't talk. Yeah.
I can't do it directly.
Directly, what do you mean? To
Just
these
for like
guys?
to schedule something every week. I think we get 1 hour.
Yeah,
a week.
but you cannot schedule with these guys. The thing is, because they are full time over here,
Yeah.
they don't have time outside unless they are registered as a tutor. I don't think so. They are.
Oh, you don't think that they are?
Well, again, it's optional.
Okay.
It's up to everybody. Not everybody wants to be a tutor, and they are already teaching. I highly doubt they're registered for a tutor. You can ask them.
Gotcha.
But what happens is you submit a request, and from a pool of tutors, they are remote. They are all over the U.S. And then you select
Gotcha.
somebody, and they're going to assign it to you, and then you work with them.
I see.
It's a
So
virtual call.
most likely won't be Ethan or Kevin.
I highly doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody even in Phoenix would. I don't
Okay.
know how many Phoenix tutors are there.
Yeah.
It's never. I don't think it's like a physical, like you sit at a coffee shop. It's always like a virtual thing.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, that's cool. Good to know. That's
Yeah.
good information. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's each folder is like what you support at that time. Now I can so that's the I think that's the answer. Yeah, because they'll go up to like the S. That's what I think this guy I always wondered about that. So now you on one hand, so now you want to get them as I think some of the websites
So you'll just need to know how to.
So we're just going back into the phone business and then going back. See what
All right, so we will start back in 2 minutes. Make sure you're coming to a good closing, good stopping point. In 2 minutes, we'll start on the next topic.
that help? That's how I learned and this came along. Yeah. But you can work that from what you have. I mean, you're still gonna do a lot, keep looking at people. But at the same time,
Yes.
random question.
Yeah.
Have you worked on SVN?
SVN?
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
You guys are still using SVN? Okay.
What so I can really get the difference, like
Yeah.
if we have a server or something,
Yeah.
but like why is it better? I'm sure it's better.
So I think it got more popular because of the open source one, and I mean there's not like a whole lot of things. I mean you can do the same thing like that, but the thing is these web hosting websites, especially like GitHub and GitLab, they become more popular because they're open source. I don't have to pay for anything, and I can share my code.
So, so that's why it got more traction. SVN, you have to pay a license fee. Like I cannot use SVN. Now they might have a free version, but personally I cannot use it because I need to pay. I don't want to pay. But GitHub, GitLab, these are like, hey, there's free talkspace, upload your projects, and everybody individually was working on it, and then companies were like, when people they used to hire people, they were like, oh, GitHub, I'm using GitHub. Why don't you use GitHub? And so they started with this GitHub. They were like, oh, if you want to have a private code space, well, you can pay us, and companies pay them so that nobody else can see their code. So that's what.
Gotcha. So kind of similar things. It's just ties into more stuff.
Yeah,
than
and more
the
people are
server space.
using it, so that's why it's now.
Gotcha.
Okay, like, now it's like de facto standard. That's
Cool. All right, cool. Thanks.
All right. We will have to move on and we'll start the next topic. Okay. So leave your activities, close your laptops, and we will, I'll upload the solutions and everything. Hopefully, you guys were at least able to do one or two. But that's okay. We'll upload the solutions. You can look at the solution, and then if you have any questions, make sure you post it on Slack. Okay. So, the next topic in CSS is called box model. Okay, what is a box model? Box model says that every single HTML element is surrounded by a box. Okay, around every HTML element, they are all inside a box. For example, if you were using an H1, right? It's an invisible box that HTML creates around it. Okay, it's true for every single element that exists in HTML. That's what the box model is. Box model says there's a box around every single HTML element. What is the use for that box and why is that box exist? That box has mainly three CSS properties, and you might have seen those: padding, border, and margin. Okay, so every box, every HTML element has a padding, a border, and a margin. Now, what is the difference between all of these? So content is the HTML element. For example, the H1 over there. That's the content. Okay. We'll start with the easier one, the border. This line, this box around an element, this is called a border. Okay, that's what the border is. Right, simple, just anything has a border, that's what the border is. Okay. Now, difference between padding and margin. Padding, I like to think, is like your comfort zone. Okay, so this is my border, and I'm increasing my comfort zone. I'm trying something different. I'm kind of becoming more comfortable. So this means I'm increasing the padding. My content, if I increase the padding, my comfort zone, it expands, but still inside this boundary or border. Okay, when you expand the padding, the content you will see growing up, taking more space, but the border is also growing. It's kind of expanding, but it's still within that border. Okay, you are not going outside the boundary. What is happening is the boundary is also increasing. That's the padding. So padding is more internal, like a comfort zone is more internal to that content, to that element. Margin, I like to think, is my personal space, right? If I'm standing over here, close to Mark, this is the personal space. Okay. If I increase the margin, if I go back, I'm increasing that personal space. Okay. So what is margin? Margin is exactly the same thing. If you increase the margin, the space between two elements, the next one is the one that gets increased. This is the margin, your personal physical space between two things. Okay, so padding internal, when you increase the padding, the content is growing, but it is going from inside within that border. When you are increasing the margin, you are basically saying I need to increase the space between whatever the element that is right of me, whatever this element is. Next one. Okay. Now all of these properties have four smaller properties. Basically, it means you can increase the margin top, bottom, right, and left. What does this mean? You can increase the margin bottom. So if there's an element over here, you can
space. You can increase margin top, left, right. All of these have these four properties. Padding, same thing. Padding top, bottom, left, and right. Okay, you can specify each one of them, or if you don't specify anything, you just say padding and give it a number. It's going to increase the padding for top, bottom, right, left, all of them by the same number that you give. Okay, if you want to be specific, you can say padding top or padding right, padding left, padding bottom, or if you don't specify anything, it's just going to increase for everything. Okay, but the main difference is, remember, border is this outline of every content. Every content has a border. Padding is a bit more internal, right? When you increase the padding, you are expanding the border and the content is taking more space. Margin is relative to the neighbor. Okay, margin is always to the next element, whatever the next element is. So when you are increasing the margin, you are increasing the space between two HTML elements. Yes.
Now that's also assuming there's probably even a hierarchy with that. So for example, like say I just do margin and I say like 30 pixels, it's going to increase it for all of them. But I think A looks good for these three sides, but the bottom one I don't want. I can't go in and do like margin bottom because just margin trumps that, right?
Yes, yes. So what you can do is you can do a margin top, top, right, left, and then leave that out. Leave the bottom one out. Or um, looks like you know some CSS, so I'm going to tell you. So or you can do is if you type in margin, and you can give 3, 4 values and leave them out. You can do that as well. So it goes from like top, right, left. We can talk about, but is you can give it individual. Yes, yes, Denzel.
Yeah, for the four values, is it always kind of like clockwise?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. We can talk about the smaller values and everything. Um, Again, this might not be making sense for people if you have never done CSS, so I'm not going to stress on this point. But the people I'm talking to, I think they get the point what I'm telling. The more important is you understand what is the difference between margin, border, and padding. Is that clear? Any questions around that? The thing is, when you are creating a website, and we'll be doing some of the activities, you need to understand you're trying to increase the margin or you're trying to increase the padding. That's the difference. Margin is always you're increasing the distance between two elements. Padding is you are trying to give your content more space. You are not trying to increase the difference between, maybe this is the right location, and that is exactly what you want. That this is the space that you want. That's okay. You don't want to change anything, but you want your content to have a little bit more space, so you're going to increase the padding and give it more content over here.
How would that work if you're changing like the font size?
Changing with the font size?
Yeah.
Right. So font size is going to increase padding unintentionally. Basically, it is taking up more space. So
increasing the font size
yes.
automatically takes up more of the padding space then?
Right. I mean, but within the code, it doesn't say it's increasing the padding. But basically, what is happening is if you're increasing the font, you are kind of pushing this up, so that you're getting more content. Right. I don't want to say it's increasing the padding because that's kind of wrong word. Technically, that's not what it is. It is increasing the font size within the content. So basically, it is increasing this content thing. This is kind of getting increased. Technically, not the padding though. Yes. So what did you have a question?
I'm just gonna wait and listen to you.
Okay, Bao.
I just want to understand this. So basically, border, let's say, I'm not sure if I'm using this analogy right. So border would be like, let's say a border between Arizona and California.
Yes, exactly.
And then, so that is a separation between the two.
Yes.
And then margin is what outside Arizona, correct?
Yes.
And then padding is what inside Arizona.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
let's
Yes,
say
yes.
I have a city in Arizona, it's Phoenix.
Yeah.
I want to expand that.
Phoenix, so that's padding.
That's padding.
Yes.
And then, but I can only expand it up until the border.
Yes. Well, yeah. Technically, the border is also in HTML. Now, not in that case. Yes. If you're talking about real example, the border stays the same. In this case, technically the border is still the same, but if you increase this thing, you will see that kind of grows up. But it's still the border. You will technically say everything is inside the border.
Oh, so.
Yeah, border is also kind of going up. Yeah, but so in that reasoning, it's never possible that it's going to go outside the border. Why? Because you're just increasing the padding, but you need some space, so it's kind of increasing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the border will get bigger.
Yes, yes. You're kind of expanding it a little bit. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, in your example, real life, yeah, the border stays the same. Okay. Excellent questions. All right. Any other questions? So yes,
Let's say you define the size of your element, maybe I'm ahead of myself,
yes,
and then you put text in your content, and it's too much for the
yes.
size that you've allowed. What happens then?
Those are a little bit different CSS properties. It's called overflow and float, and we will take a look at those. But yes, those can be handled. You'll have to fix it. Yes, those are different CSS properties, and I'll show you. It's called overflow. How do you fix that? Yeah, there are some options for that. Okay. All right. So let's do this. I'm going to quickly code something out. I'll create a let's create a box, and then I'll show you how to increase the margin or what those properties are really quickly, and then we can move on to the next one. So for example, let's call it box model, and I have my index.html, and then I have my styles.css. Oops. Let's say box model, increase, add the link. It's on the same path. Okay, I'll close this out. And let's go ahead. I'm going to use the element div, and I'm going to create a class. I don't have it yet, but I'll just put it so I don't have to come back to it. I'll call it box1. Okay. Just to show all of these properties, so I'll create a div, and it will kind of show up as a box. So with a color, so that you guys can visually see this. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, empty. I don't have any CSS yet, so let's go ahead and add something. I called it box1, so I'm going to say box1 CSS. Okay, let's give it some background color. Okay, dot box1. Okay, and let's see. I think I'm missing something. Should have. Did I do a mistake? Let's see. Box1, styles, div, class, box dash 1. What is it? Oh, maybe because I don't have a text. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Come back. Okay. So I'm going to skip the content. I was just testing that out. We'll give a width and everything. Yes. So actually, you know what? I'm going to show you something, and then I'm going to remove this content. Okay. Now I want you guys to notice what is happening over here. What is happening over here? This element, I'm using div. It is taking the whole space. Okay. Now, any HTML element, there are elements that are going to take up the whole space. They don't play nicely with their neighbors. Anything that you want to put, if you want to put another HTML element, where is that element going to come? It's going to come after in the new line. Why? Because this element by default takes up the whole space. One of the examples is the div element. Okay? These type of elements are called block elements. Why are they called block? Because they take up the whole block. Okay? These are called block level elements. Now compared to block level elements, there are so your block elements are H1, H1 to H6. All of them are block level elements. What else? Divs, Then there are some newer tags in HTML5, header, section, aside. They all are block level elements, and you don't have to remember that. The only thing you need to remember is that block level elements. And when you're working with it, you will realize that there is no space. Maybe you want to put something next to it, but you're using a div or a block level element, and you're like, well, it's going to go to the next line. The reason is these are block level elements. They do not let you put anything next to them. There are more CSS properties. We'll take a look at it. How do we make them behave, and how do we say, okay, don't take up so much space, but you will see how we do it. But this is, by default, these are block level elements. The next one is inline elements. Those are the elements that take up only the space that is required and let you put other things next to it. For example, your anchor link. So if this was a tag, you will notice it only took up this space. So a tag is an example of an element called inline elements. Okay, so block level elements take up the whole space. Inline elements take up only the space that they require. Okay, the space over here is this much because the text stops over here. If you add more text, it's going to expand and it's going to take up only the space that is required. Okay, so if you put a element after this, that element is going to show up next to it. Okay, yes. P tag is also a block level element. Yes, so P does not like to share the space. It's going to come up and take up the next one. It doesn't like anything left or right to it. So any block level elements, they do not like to share the space, so they're always going to take the whole space. Yeah. There are ways, and we'll see how to fix that. But that's the definition of a block level element and an inline element. So if you are trying to draw something, an element, and you're like, well, why is it taking so much space? The reason probably is you are using a block level element. Okay?
The difference that coincides between those, between two tags versus like one including tags versus like the tag that only has the one character.
Anchor has two, one and.
Oh, it does. All right, so no.
The image tag doesn't have. So image, there are some tags, there are a few of them that do not have a end closing. Those are called self-closing tags. I'm not sure why. Well, I can tell the reason is if you had a cell image, there is no. I mean, you're not, never going to put any text between these two. Anything that you put between these two things, it shows up. But image, you are trying to show an image. You're not trying to show a text. So that's why they don't have a. This is kind of redundant part. So that's why they never included it. Yes, Tom. Right, right. So let's say, let's try it. Let's see what happens. So if I make this div, this is obviously going to go to the next one, right? Because div is going to take the whole space, right? And then A comes next. Okay. What if we switch the order? Okay. Still the same thing. The block level elements do not like left, right, anything, right? They are going to take the whole block no matter what. Okay. But if you had another A tag, what's going to happen if I put A tag over here? What do you think, Tom? Side to each other. Why? Because A tags are inline tags and they have this much space available to any other inline tags. Okay. Yes.
So that's basically
Yes. 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 That's the default margin. Yes.
But if you wanted the second one underneath the first one instead of next to it on the right.
You need a at the bottom. Yes, it's possible. Again, we are advancing. I have a whole lecture prepared for all of those things. Don't worry about it. Right. Right now, just the margins border. That's what I'm trying to show. Yes, you can do it. Yes, I'll show you how to do it. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
So when you say the background color, is that like filling up the content and the padding of the graph or the content?
It's filling up the content.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at the border in a minute, and I'll show you how where the border is actually invisible. It is right outside over here. Padding is included. Padding might be the color and it's going to expand. We'll see. I'll show you the padding and everything in a minute. Okay, so let's move on and look at the border first, and then we'll look at the padding and then see how these are working. So I'll move it to block level element, so that takes up the whole space. Okay. Oh yeah. Let me show you one more thing. So there are properties for width and height, right? Width, let's say 200. So I'm creating a box. Height px. Okay. So what happened over here? I mean, I don't need the text anymore, so we'll remove the text. Okay. So I have controlled the width and the height of this block level element. What does it does this mean that this space is now available? No, it's not. They're kind of fooling you. They're like, all right, I'm this size, but they're still block level element. They will not let you put another box over here. They are still taking up the space. You have just reduced the width and the height of the content, not the actual div. Okay, so if you have another box, let's go ahead and create another box. Let's say box 2, give it a different color, and put in another div, give it a class, box 2. Okay, so it doesn't matter. You can put an A tag, anything, but this space is still owned by this one, even though you have reduced the height and the width. Okay, it doesn't really matter. It's always going to take a thing. Now, you cannot control that with just with the height and width. There are other properties, and we'll take a look at it. You can control those things and make them reduce instead of taking up the whole space. You can actually reduce it and tell them don't take up the whole space. Okay. All right, let's talk about the border and then I'll show you how to, because border is pretty easy. The property is called border, okay? Let's suppose I want to give my border a color. So let's start with the style. If you say style, there are different styles. Now you want your border to be dashed, dotted, double, whatever you want, okay? Let's pick the solid one so that we can actually see something, okay? Now I'm going to give my border a color, a different color so that it shows up. So I'm going to select the property color. This is blue. Let's say, let's give it a black color. Okay, and then I'm going to give a width of my border. So this is going to increase. Let's start with the px. Now, what is this px? Px stands for pixels. This is one of the units that CSS uses. Okay, it's the same thing, pixel on your monitor and everything. That's what it is counting by. Okay, just remember, don't have to go into more detail. It's one of the units, so you have to specify. There are a few more. Px is widely used, and in your cases, you can deal with it. You can use that. It's fine, but you have to mention anything. Anytime you're using a number, some kind of a measurement, you need to give some kind of a unit, right? For our cases, right now, pixel is fine to make sure you do a px. If you don't give a px, you won't get the result that you're expecting. It's going to default to some other unit. Okay, so now I have a border. I have this is how it shows up. So now I have a border. It was invisible by default. Since I added some of those properties, it created a solid border with color black and width of 5 pixels. Okay, and you can keep increasing those however you want, but that's the border property. Okay, now we were talking earlier, there is a shortcut that if you, these are all individual properties, but you can do all of this in just one line. So I'm going to leave this over here, comment it out, but you can say border, and then you can say solid black 5 pixel, and it still works. Now CSS internally knows that if you put in the word solid, it is going to assign it to style. If you put a color, it's going to assign it color. If you put a width, it's going to assign it to width. The order does not matter. You can put 5px before. It is smart enough to recognize what you're trying to do. Okay, it still works. The order doesn't matter. Okay, within the style, within their code, if you put a number, they are making that assumption. Okay, yes. I would say if you're starting, I want you guys to naturally tend towards the cleaner way. If I force it, it's not, there are some things I'm going to force, such as the external CSS. Okay. But some of the things with experience, they come along. When I was doing as a junior, I would do this because my thing was I want to see exactly what I'm trying to do. But as I program more, I was like, well, I already know all this stuff. It's kind of redundant. I could just do this. I understand what it is. This is more so that you understand. You exactly know, like 2 months later, if you go back to your code and you're not as good as CSS, this would help you to be, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. But you're doing more, your experience, you exactly know what this means. That's what I would say. So let it naturally tend towards that coding style. Yes.
And so with the border style, I can choose this, like that's solid. And this,
Yeah, you can choose anything you want. Yeah, there. If you write this style, you will see it gives you options. Again, this is Visual Studio is actually giving you these options. If you were using a different ID or anything, then you will have to go to W3 schools or some other documentation and find out what are the styles available. This is Visual Studio is helping you, so it kind of shows up. Okay, not every ID will have this. Okay, so I'll keep this, and this is my border. Okay. Um, the next one is, let's see, padding. So what happens if I increase the padding over here? So if I say padding and then say 30 px. Okay, so you can't tell. You will say, well, it looks like it increased the size. Remember, this is increasing and it is pushing the border as well, but the content will still be inside the border technically. Okay, it visually it is saying, well, I'm still inside the border, but I'm kind of expanding it, but everything will still be inside this border. Okay. If you had some text inside it, let's see what happens if I put some. Okay. Um, let's change it to. Okay, that's better. Okay, so let me go ahead and remove the padding, and you will see what happens to the text. Okay. So what is the content? The content is this thing, whatever you have typed in between the div tags. If you increase the padding, you are increasing the padding around this by 10, 30, 30, 30. Okay, this is this big. Why? Because I fixed the width and the height. If you remove the width and the height, then it will be one yellow line, and then you will see this increasing from all sides. So hold on, Bao. If I move this, then this is it. So if I remove the padding, this is how it initially starts. As you start off, then kind of expands as you want. Okay, let me put this back and then we'll go to, oops. Yes. Wow.
so let's say if I want to style write your caption, right?
Yes.
Writing and make it more standard. Let's say if I
Yeah.
create that box
Yes.
and caption, I
Right.
want to make it into more like a text, like title.
Right.
And, change
Yes.
size a little.
You'll have to learn a little bit more CSS. Yes. Yeah. No, no, everything again. Everything is possible, right? Those are good questions and everything, but those tip I want you guys to go and try and see. Read up on W3 School. Of course, CSS is a lot, and I cannot show you everything. Right now, what I'm trying to show is what margins and borders and everything else. Yes, you can make them center. You can make it over here. You can do everything. Okay. But the more thing is you understand the concept first, then what are the options available, and then go ahead and try those things out. Okay, if I start doing all of these things, I don't think we will get through the lecture. But yes, everything is possible in CSS. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, come to us and we'll sit together and do it. It's more like an individual ask that, okay, what if I want to do this? Yes, you can do it. Just you need a little bit more CSS practice. Okay? Yes. Um, so width and the height is kind of restricting this thing. Okay. And then what are you saying? Um, let's see. Yes. Oops.
If you had straight text in there, you would actually see it a little bit cleaner.
Uh,
See it from the keywords.
Yeah. So you see the text. It doesn't look like, but it is actually taking this box. That's why. That's what I was saying. That's the div property. It's not visible. It looks like, well, what is all this space? I'll show you the inspector what I did in the next class. But what I'm trying to show is that it actually is taking up that whole space.
You
Yes.
see the padding a lot better.
Yes. Yes. I'll show you the inspector tool in the next class. It will show you clearly what padding and everything is at. Right now, I just want you guys to understand what padding and margins are. That's all. Okay. And the reason is, I understand there are people who are familiar with CSS and HTML, but there are a lot of people who have no idea what HTML is, what CSS is. They have never written code, so I want to make sure you take the class on the same pace. Okay. Again, those people who know it, please make sure you help other people. They're going to struggle with these things. Sit with them and explain them. Okay, this is how this is going to work. Okay. But yes, all of those questions valid. This is how it works. Okay, jumping ahead. I know why I want to show you that, but all of this is in the next class. Okay. Now the margin, same thing. You just add your margin property, and then you can increase the space between elements. You see this? The space increase. Why did it? If you see, it was. I'm going to remove this. Right now, it's at this location. When I increase the margin, when I add a margin, why is it coming over here? Right. Why? Because I have this property. Remember, this property is saying add margin 50px to the top, right, left, bottom, everywhere. Okay. Why? Because I'm not specifying what I want. So it increases the margin from here, from here, from here, and from here as well. Okay. If you wanted to only increase one, then they have all the four properties over here: top, left, bottom, right. You can use any four of them. Okay, so that's the margin. So margin is if you want to increase space between elements. Padding is you want to stay within the border, but you want this text to be kind of have more space. That's what padding is. Okay, yes.
I would make the text
Text bigger?
with the padding.
How do you make the text bigger? What is text? It's a font, right? Okay, see, you answered your question. Yes, font size. Okay. All right. One more thing. So we talked about block level elements and inline elements, right? How do you convert? There's a property. It's called display property. Okay, that's a CSS property called display, and display lets you convert block level elements into inline elements and inline elements into block elements. Okay, for example, if I put this property over here, let's remove the margin so that I still have space so that you guys can see this. Okay, property is called display. Okay, so you will see these are the properties. We'll talk about inline and inline block. Okay, for now. So this is a div. This is a block level element. Okay, I want to convert it into inline. Why? Because I want it to play nicely with the next one. So if I do inline, okay, oops. So if you put inline, remember what are inline elements? Inline elements are the ones that are only going to take space that is required. Why is it taking only this much space? Because I do have a padding over here. So that's why you see this padding over here, and this is the amount it requires. So it has become inline. I know it's overlapping with this one and all, but this is how you convert an block level element into an inline element. You use a property called display and say this is going to be inline. Okay, that's the first step. The second step you will see, I have, we'll talk about this plugin, but I have some help installed. So any code that I write which is incorrect, Visual Studio kind of helps me with it. So you see those two underlines. If you hover over it, it is saying that if you are using the display property inline, the width and the height do not matter. It is going to ignore the height and the width. Okay.
So I do not need these properties. Again, remember inline elements are going to take a space that is required. They don't care about the width, they don't care about the height. Okay? It works, but it doesn't work in this case. So for this case, what they did was they introduced inline block. Just kind of flavor of both of them. So I do want a block. Why? Because I want it to respect the height and the width, but I also want it to play nicely with it. Okay, that's why. Now the reason this one doesn't come up because this one is still blocked, so we'll go ahead and add this to inline block. And do I have padding? Some padding. Hmm. There's something blocking it. It's probably the border. Let's see. That's okay. We can come back and fix this. Let's see if I remove this. Okay, we can come back and fix this. I think it's one of the properties that I mentioned. Okay, but you see what happened? Um, this box only took up this space, and there's some space on the top. We'll see. Maybe I have some border or a height that is taking up this whole thing. But this is how you would convert a block level element into an inline element. Okay, that's one of the ways. Okay, just remember difference between block and inline. Block takes up the whole space. Inline are going to take only the space that you want. You can convert a block level element into a inline element, and you can vice versa convert an inline element into a block level element. Why? Which property? The property is called display. Okay. Now, what is the difference between inline block and inline and individual block ones? If you put a inline property, it is not going to respect the width and the height. We saw that. So if you have just inline property, it is going to ignore the width and the height. Why? Because that's the property of inline elements, right? They do not depend on the width and the height. They are going to take only the space that is required. All right. In some cases, that is okay. In some cases, we do need it to respect the height and the width. For example, I do want a box over here. So this is why the property is available called inline block. If I do this. Okay, so those are the differences. Again, it is possible that somebody might ask you in an interview, what's the difference between inline block, why do I need inline block versus just block? So those are the differences. Okay, any questions on the concept, anything, everybody understand the difference between inline block and what is inline block? Okay, okay, what is the question?
I don't understand the inline block. And,
Right, so what do you think is inline?
what inline is, inline is what you know when the element really what the required space.
Yes, and what is a block?
Block is it doesn't respect that.
Okay, so if I want the element to, what else does block do? Block takes a whole space, and what does it do? It does not let any other element come next to it, right? What if I want the element next to it, and I want it to take up a certain space that I am defining over here?
Oh, mean like if you want
I want the space as well, I want the width and the height, and I want it to play nicely with it. So I want the combination best of inline, and I want best of block. How do I get it? I combine them and say inline block. That's what inline block is. Okay? Any other questions?
I'm so confused on like the display.
This thing?
Yeah, the environment like block is what it does exactly.
So what does inline do? What is an inline element?
So it controls the only space required,
Only the space required. What does block do?
whole space.
Whole space, right? It takes up the whole space, and inline only takes up the space that you want. Okay. Now, what other thing block does. It does not let any other element come next to it. Okay, so I want to convert that into an inline because I want that something else also next to it. Okay, so I want to convert it to an inline, but inline does not respect the width and the height. Block does. So I want the best of inline that it lets everything else come over here, and then I want the property from block that lets me set the width and the height. So I want both of them. In case if I want both of them, the property is called inline block. That's why. So you're getting kind of like the best of both things. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. We do have. It's only 5 minutes left. I don't want to start. We still have two more topics, so we'll start after lunch. So we'll break for lunch. Uh, come back. We'll start the class at 12:45. Okay.
When?
12:45. Yes, 45.
So,
Yes.
the reason why you so big.
Yes, sir. I really like it. You can see my customers are just gonna really celebrate. Right where they need to be. When you start working with customers, yeah. He just started crying. It's worth a shot. Real hard.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So before lunch, we looked at inline block. Okay. So for example, just to recap, if this is my UI, oops, and then I put in display inline block. I want them right next to each other. This is how you would do it, right? Because these are by default block elements, and I want them to behave like inline elements, but I don't want them to lose some of the good parts of block, which are width and the height. Okay. So what do? I have these two boxes. Both of them are um, block elements, and then I added the display property inline block so that they can play nicely next to each other. Yes, yeah.
Before lunch, they weren't right next to each other, so why did you get them right next to each other?
Right. That is exactly what I was explaining right now.
Oh, okay.
So, so here we go. They are not. Why are they not? Tell me why are they not next to each other? Deanne, I'm asking. Hold on, Deanne, tell me why are they not? Yes.
I don't know, that's why I asked you.
Why? So what? So. All right. So we talked about block and inline elements, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Which type of is it a block element or an inline element?
Well, right now, it's just a block, not.
It's a block,
or, yeah,
right?
Not in line.
It's not inline, it's a block element, right? It's a div. So div by default is block level. So this means the div is taking this whole space and whole space.
Right.
Okay. So what are inline elements? Inline elements are that they can be right next to each other,
Right.
right? And we looked at the property where we can convert our block elements into inline elements.
Right.
What is the property? It's the property called display.
Or what?
Display,
Oh, display.
right? So let me remove this and write this out so that you guys can see. So the property is called display, and then it's called inline block. We'll talk about what block is, but this is the property that makes it behave like an inline element. Okay? So I have a block element, but I want it to behave like an inline element. How do I do it? I use this property and set it to inline block. Okay? The same thing I would do to the next one, and that is how they both are now inline elements and come next to each other. That's all. Okay? Why is it inline block and just not inline? Remember, inline does not care about your width and the height. Okay? So, but I want the width height also, and I want them to be inline as well. So that's why the property is called inline dash block. This means you get both of those things. So that's how they come next to each other. Yes, Howard.
What did you find out? What was causing them to be a little staggered from?
Oh, I just had to refresh. I think it was cached. It didn't do it.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. I should have had refresh and it would have worked. That was it. Yes.
So does all the does it have to go through all the same whatever like you post on there like padding and can you go back to like padding and display marking order? Does it have to be exact the same order?
No, it can be any order, but it renders by this order. It will do this first, this first, this first, this first, this first. But yeah, but it doesn't matter to you. I mean, eventually you will get this. So when you're writing code, you can put this at the top, at the bottom. It doesn't matter. But yes, technically, I have to tell you that it goes like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay. All right. So yes. No, there is. But why would you need a display block? What, if I have an inline element and I want to make it a block element, how would I do that? Yeah. Yeah. Not next time, it will take up the whole space. So let's suppose a tag, anchor tag is an inline element. For some reason, I want to make it a block element. So I would have a display property, block, and it's going to convert it into. Yes, yes, yes. Block takes up the whole space, inline doesn't take up the whole space. That's the difference. Okay? Now this is not the only property. The next properties that we are going to look at is called float. Okay, so float is another property in CSS that does not change the block or inline or anything. What it does is it floats the element based on what you are asking it to. Okay, the property is called float, and the options are options are right and left. Okay, so how does float work? For example, these are the two boxes that I have. They are one on the top, one at the bottom, but I want both of them to be next to each other, right? First option is change the display to block and inline, and that will work. The other option is you float these elements. Okay. Now in this example, you can use both, either one. That's fine. But the reason I'm introducing float is that in activities and some of the cases, you will see a lot of people use float a lot. What is display doing is converting that element into a block or inline, right? It is taking away its natural ability and converting into it, which is okay. But in some cases, you might not run into this issue, but in some cases, you might be creating a page where you don't want to take that ability away, right? What is the other option? The other option is you're going to use floats. What does float do? Float basically floats the element to whatever direction you are telling them. Okay. For example, my box one, I want my box one to be on this side, on the left side of the screen. Okay. So I'm going to say float left. Nothing changes. It's on the left side. There's something else over here happening, and we'll fix it. Okay. The second box, I want it to be right next to this one. Okay. I want this element to be floated on the left of this thing. So if you put in float left here as well, It comes to it, but you see there's no margin, there's nothing over here. It kind of sticks to it. That's what the float does, right? It is basically stacking up or putting elements based on the direction. So if I change this float to right, what is going to happen is this element is going to go towards the right, right? Now remember you were doing your student bio, student activities. If you started working on the activity number 6, this is the hint. This is how you have a simple property called float. Based on your content, you can put them either left or the right. Okay, you can float both of them right as well. They both are going to come on the right. There's no center, so there's only left and right. Okay, so display block in inline, that's one thing, and then the other thing is float. What is float doing? Float is going to put this element, kind of convert it into an inline element, and then based on whatever direction you're giving, that's what it will be. Okay, that's the float property. Two options, right and left. That's all it does. Okay. Now there is another property which is called clear. Okay. Um, Clear also has three options: right, left, and order. Okay. Clear property says if you assign the clear property to any of these CSS elements, the property says they're there. If I select right, this property is going to say that there should be no element right to the element that has the CSS property. Okay, for example, I have a box over here. Okay, and this has in the CSS it has a property called clear right. What is going to happen is the next element that you place it, whether it has a float left or float right, it does not matter. This property will not let you place any element next to this property. Okay? If this property is left, you cannot place any element to the left over here. Okay? If it's not order, it's both. If this property is set to both, then basically this element will take up the whole space and will not let any other element place itself to the right or the left. That's what clear does. Okay, again, float left, float right. Clear says if you select both, this means that you cannot have a box left to me, you cannot have a box right to me. They have to go on the second one. If you say clear right, then there cannot be anything to the right of that box. You can have some elements on the left. That's what clear does. Clear basically does not allow any other HTML element to come either left of it, right of it, or both. Okay, we'll see that in action in a minute, but that's what clear does. Clear will not let you, basically you're saying, you're forcing that if this has a property of clear right, this element cannot exist over it, it has to come down. That's what clear does. Well, I'll code out a kind of like a basic web page. You use a sketch or a UI design, which you have a header, footer, and something. I'll sketch out a basic web page, and we'll see how the clear property comes over here. Okay, so let's do this. So float, we're going to use floats, and we're going to use clears instead of the display inline to see how that works. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to have a basic, like the basic definition of a web page is that you have a header, right? You have a header, and then you have a footer, and then you have some panel, left panel over here, and then you have some main content over here, right? That's like almost every other web page or a beginner's or your student bio or whatever you're trying to do. So I have a header, I have a footer, I have some content like a left panel over there, and then on the right I have like main content, could be a text or anything. Okay, so we'll draw this out, and I'm going to show you how to use floats to get to that point. Okay. First, I'm going to write these elements, and you will see they are going to stack up like this, and this. Why? Because that's the default behavior. If you don't have any CSS, any floating, and everything, right? You create an element. If it's a block, it will take up the whole space. If it's not, it's going to come down on the next line. Okay. So let's see how would we draw this one. So what I'm going to do is quickly create a new folder. Let's call this float example. Okay, I'll have a index.html and then styles.css. Let's close this. Quickly create a index file. Oops. That's why. See, if it doesn't work, this means I'm doing something wrong. So I don't even bother doing anything. I'm like, okay, I'm going to find out why Visual Studio is not helping me. Float example. Okay, and let's go ahead and add a link. Dot slash styles. And there it is. Format it. Okay. So what I was saying is we're going to create a simple web page that should look like this. So I'm going to have a body tag, header, and then some divs. So let's go ahead and I'm going to have a oops, not head, one header. Okay, let's see header. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys looked into it. These are basically div tags, right? But these are like newer tags in HTML5, and we'll talk about it in the next week. Basically, behind the scene, the code is still the same. They are basic div tags, but they are more semantic. This means that they give the meaning out. That what am I trying to do? I'm trying to create a header. That's all they do. I mean, you can replace this with div tag as well, and the code is still the same. There's no difference. But in HTML5, they wanted to differentiate. They wanted to have some semantic tags so that people who are looking at the code actually understand, okay, what this tag is for. So they have introduced these tags. And I'm going to talk about this more next week, that what actually they are doing. But for now, for our cases, we can replace it with a div. There's no difference. Okay, the code is still the same. This just helps you understand that I'm trying to create a header. Okay, so I have the header. Then I need something on the side. Okay, again, it could be a div tag, but they also have a tag called aside. Basically, this is telling you that I'm trying to create a content which is going to be on the side, which is this one. Kind of like a banner or something, or like a menu, whatever you want to put it over there. Okay, so we'll say this is my aside menu. And then I'm going to have some main contents. I'm going to use the tag main. This would be the right of my aside on the diagram. This could be text, images, whatever you want. Okay, this is just a simple layout. And then at the end, I'm going to have a footer. Okay, basically this is what I want. So if I go ahead and render this, it should show up. But right now it will be just text. So we'll go ahead and add some boxes to it. And why is each one of them in the next line? Remember, behind the scenes, these are all div tags. They are block elements. They're taking up the whole space. I'll add some color so that you guys can actually see how these boxes are. So we will just add some CSS, add some background colors. Let's see. So let's add, I'm going to use the selector, element selector, because there's only one header, so that will work. Let's give it a background color. Let's give it light blue. Okay. And I will give it a height. Let's say 100 px, and then I'll give it some. So this is my header. Okay. Let's give the same thing to my. I'm just going to copy paste. This would be my aside tag. Okay. Background color will keep it at the same thing. Height is, let's give it more height. 400 px. Okay. And let's do the same thing with the main. Okay, let's add some border so that we can actually see where each one ends. So it's a border. Just do 1px solid. Let's do black so I can see it. Okay, so this is my header. I'll copy the same thing over so that this is my side. Okay, and then let's fix the main. So I have my main, same color, same everything. Let's use this one. Okay, this is my main. So you see the problem over here, everything is going next line. I want them to be shifted to next to each other. Okay, so we'll fix that. And let's go ahead and add our footer as well. Footer, let's use the same thing, but I don't want the height. I want the same height as my, okay, light blue footer. So here's my web page. Okay, header, aside, main, footer. All right, the problem is they are not right next to each other, so that's the fix, and that's what we would use floating for. Okay, so let's start with the top one, the header. So my header is in the correct position. I do want my header to take up the whole space, right? That's how you do it. My aside and my main are in the wrong position. I want aside to be over here and main to be over here, and we'll modify some of the width and the height when we place next to each other. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and add our float property that we learned. So I'm going to say aside should be float left. Okay. And then my main should be float left as well. Okay. So it's getting there. So my aside did it, my main did it, and then my footer also came up over here. Again, why? Since I did the main float, they kind of are acting like an inline element now. Okay, so inline element, so it has space, it leaves some space, and then since my footer is over here, it kind of jumps over here. Okay, now remember the clear property. Can I use my clear property? In my footer, I don't want anything towards the left, I don't want anything towards the right. Right? So in my footer, I can use the clear property and tell them, oh, I don't want any element to the left of it. What is going to happen is going to push this down because these two elements are there first. So that's why they are already taking up that space. So if I go back over here and I say clear both, my footer kind of comes down. You see what happened? So there shouldn't be anything next to it. Shouldn't be anything over here. The only position in this page for footer is over here, right? These two are already there. And how do I know they are already there? Because this is the code I have written. Starts with header first. So header, then aside, then main, then footer, right? So the next position for footer should be the last one. So that's why it comes up over here. Okay? Let me go back. Yes, Bob.
Can you please explain to me how when you put the left on the main and then the side, and then the footer will come up to the right and the like I thought automatically if you do float on left and on main and on the side. Why why did the footer go up right
Yeah. So with the float property, what is happening is now I don't want to say they are kind of acting like inline element, but we don't have a better word. But they are kind of they are only taking the space that is required and leaving the space for anything else to come up. So there is this space that is literally this space is empty and it is left for anything else to come up over. So that's why footer kind of jumps up. So the flow of every HTML page is from left to right. Okay, so left, then right, then right, then right. That's the flow. That's the natural flow of any web page. That it goes from this. Now this is actually a block level element, but since we are using, that's why I don't want it to use the inline example over here. Since we're using float is doing something else. It's actually literally kind of imagining that this space is left for any other element to come up and take up the space. That's what float is doing. Float is kind of forcing it towards the left. So it is taking towards the left and leaving this space like there is no element. So that's why kind of footer takes up that space. The flow is from left to right. All right. Yes.
You kind of that was just
Yes.
like the footer is still
Yes.
kind of a block level element.
Right.
So
That's why I didn't want to use the block in inline. Float works a little bit different, and that's what float does.
creates like its own little
Yes.
space
Yes.
on the
Yes.
side.
Yes. So that's why the code behind the scenes for float is a little bit different. So you see the difference if you're using inline block versus the float property. This is the differences that you will see. So you have to decide what you're trying to do. Yes, CJ.
Another way of saying the right way, that since the code is block element, we use clear
Clear the main.
the main.
Oh yeah, you can do clear the main on the right.
But your way
Yeah, it's both, and it's more logical. The reason is when somebody looks at my code, it makes sense to everybody. Oh, there shouldn't be anything towards the right of the footer ever. There shouldn't be anything towards the right and the left of the footer. Main, it's kind of like a one-off thing that I'm going to create this main. Why? Because there's a footer. What if I have another element that has to be next to main? What if I add a third? What's going to happen? Now you have to go back to the code, and then you have to do the whole thing again. But the right way is because for 100%, I'm 100% sure that there can nothing be on the left and the right of footer. That's how my page is. For main, there can be something on the right. If I add like a right side menu or something, then it can change it. Yes, Scott.
So we do clear both on the footer, and if you did film went onto main and then clear right, that wouldn't delete the white space. That white space is still be there. You just wouldn't be able to add anything else.
So you're saying do a clear, right? Yeah. I mean, visually you can't see it, but what you are saying is right that this space is now not available to anything else. Yeah. And you don't want to clear. Do you understand why do you don't want to clear main? Because there's an option you might need to put something over there. Yes. Oh yes, Bob. Okay. Any? Did you have a question? Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
Just important to note, right now we have them both set as float left, but if you put main as float right and took off the clear both, that footer would go into the middle because I'm saying that
Oh, this is nice. I like this one. So this.
So now take off the clear both on the footer.
Well, this looks nice.
You see, it doesn't matter whether they're both float left or one is float right. It's basically saying anything in between is open space or whatever becomes all up in.
So this is the difference between that inline and block. That's why I'm hesitating to use those words because block will actually cover the whole thing. Nothing is allowed. Floats are taking the space and leaving everything literally empty. That's the space that you can use. Yeah. Float has nothing to do with block. That's right. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have used the word block when I was talking about float. Float is just floating your things to wherever you want. Let's say that. Okay. Float will float your HTML elements to the direction you tell them. If you say float left, they're going to float left. If you tell them float right, they're just going to go and float. That's all.
So
Yes.
would you say put and the element would be block and then the aside and the main would be inline?
No block, no inline, nothing. I'm not talking about that. That has gone. I'm just saying these are just simple HTML elements, which are. Let me fix this back.
All those are block elements. They are block.
Yes, those are block elements, but let's not confuse block and float. Yes, yes. I should not have used the word block when I was talking about float. Okay, float is something different, and block is something different. Okay, float basically understand that it is going to float your elements left and right and all. Okay, that's what float is. So you see my, I think I forgot to refresh. So my side is left. Float. Oh, float down. Float left. Okay, and then now how do we fix it? This is easy. You can set a width and a height. It will fix the width. So let's see. Since I'm setting the height. Let's set a width. Let's say 7. Let's see how far it goes. Let's give some width to aside as well. Let's give it a width. What was that? WIF? Is that
Yeah,
what?
I figured out what you're trying to say.
Oh, my DNF arc. So it's kind of hard. So I'm looking over here and I'm typing over here. So my DNF are next to each other. That's why. Okay. Will you guys be able to fix this width or not? Right. You just have to trial and error. Right now it's 700. I think 720 or 760 will fix that. Yes.
So there's not really a way to have that stretch to the end.
Oh, good question. There is a way. The other way is use percentages instead of pixels. So right now I'm hard coding this. I'm saying it has to be 300 pixels. The better way is you can use percentages. That um, my main should cover 75% of the screen, and then my width should be 25% of the screen. Okay, one of the it's probably not the right because my screen is short. Let's do 15. Yeah, it's a percentage wasn't right, but it's my border or whatever. But you can use percentages as well. That's probably again I didn't want to say it. I mean, as you get into it, you will come to a point where you'll be like, well, this is so much hard coded. Percentages is the way. A lot of responsive websites you will see they kind of have percentages because you don't know what resolution this website is going to open on. But that's for a later discussion. Since he asked, so I'm telling you, you can use percentages here as well. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. But again, I want this to be a natural progression. So again, if you don't have any experience with CSS, start with pixels. I want you to suffer through it, and then you will be like, is there a better way? Yes, percentages, right? That's how you do it. Right? So all of those people who are asking questions, who are suggesting, they have gone through the same process. I can tell you. They started with pixels and this one realized, oh, there's something better, percentages. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? So this is how you would create a web page. Now, I hope if you're working on student portfolio or bio, this would help. This is what you are missing. You're missing padding. You can add paddings and everything. It will add a space over here. Okay. Now, what I want you guys to do is either you have two options. In next 10, 15 minutes, either you can draw this out, write the code. I'm not going to show you the code. I'm going to keep this up. Okay. And you will have to fix this. Okay. Try it on your own. Or if you think for people who have experience and they are like, well, okay, I can do this. For you guys, see if you can do this. This is activity number. The activity is there. This is actually activity number. Ethan, do you remember what activity number is this? Activity number 9. Okay. So activity number 9 gives you some basic code, and the code would just have these literally written down in HTML. Okay. You will have to add CSS. This is not as crazy as it looks like. Again, this is for people who want a little bit more challenging stuff. Otherwise, recommended is you try to get to this point first. Okay, if you have never written CSS, no idea what is going on, try to get to this first. For if you already have some idea, you want to try something different, activity number 9, and this is how it should eventually look like. Okay, concepts are still the same. You are going to use footer. You're going to use the float left, right. See how you can override. Um, okay, again, we'll just take like 10, 15 minutes. I'm sure this is not enough time to do any of these stuff, but I just need to cover one more thing.
I included that in the zip file and slide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what also this is a Jordan. Jordan company. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you get that. Jordan had a space. Yes. Yep. I was like, wow, that was fast, man. I was like, no, look at this last night. But I get everything is those three. Okay. You think so? It's I think these two are too wide. Yeah. But pretty good. So what's the width? Well, you can't. You gotta have. If you have the specifier, then you have to put something. So put. Well, you can put like try like 10%. So that, or you could do 0. Yeah. So what is 50%? 50% is 50% of the screen. Exactly what it did. Yeah. Computers are your best friend. They'll do exactly what they tell you, what you tell them to. Computers are your worst enemy because they'll do exactly what you tell them to do.
Yes. See, Kevin told the computer to delete 5 million records, and that's why. How did 5 million records?
Well, I didn't delete them.
Yeah,
It changed their
updated.
usernames,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
I archived them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can't use them.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. That's right. Anyone trying to do this one, the colorful one? Okay, couple of people. Nice.
Yeah, it's you didn't break anything. It's like that's gonna save. Yeah, and you can move that. Yeah, so right this moment, don't. You realize color? Yeah, background color. Big difference. Yes. Oh no.
Yes.
I'm still confused on like these brackets. Does it have to go before the header? Or...
No, you're right.
So that's fine like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Just doesn't look right to me for some reason.
Yeah. So no, that's fine. I would say border. With border, press enter. Starting a border. Starting a border.
Oh, start.
Like the word border. No, no, no. You're fine. Go back.
Oh, okay.
Now this word right after the parentheses. So, yeah. Click on right after the parentheses.
That one?
Parentheses, yes. After the parentheses. Enter. So this is how.
Oh, okay.
So you were talking about how the cleaner code and everything. That's
okay,
that's
yeah.
how it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it looks like it So this where it goes. Yeah, so it's inside it. So look right here. So this is what we were kind of talking about. This kind of shows your changes. So this is all based on so it's saying so what this means is that next time it's your poll, it's going to tell you there's conflicts. So what I would do is I would say these are the files, I just cut them out of there and paste them somewhere else. And then it will yeah, worst case scenario, you just leave them out of there, you did the practice. But yeah, for going forward, I would definitely like for this one, if you want to do another like a working folder, then you can copy that stuff out of there. Yeah. So what I would do is probably copy that information, and then in a whole separate folder outside that UA. Yeah. That'll work for now, but so it's yeah, but that's so again, that's
I know I shouldn't have said block when I was talking about fluids. Shouldn't have. Okay. All right. I know you guys are working on. I still have to cover just one more property. So let's get back. The thing is, I want to leave some time for Ethan to introduce the homework. This is going to be our first homework, so I want him to have some time to go over it. So give me a few more minutes. I'm going to go over one more property. I want to clarify a few things. All right. The first thing is I should not have mentioned block and everything with float. I'm sorry. All of these are independent properties. Okay. You are going to most probably use one of them. If you're using display property, stick to display. If you're using float, stick to float. The third one I'm going to introduce is position. It has nothing to do with floats. Has nothing to do with display. It looks like it has something to do with, but they are different. Okay. Now, as a beginners, I would suggest that pick one and try those things. Eventually, there might be some overlaps. There might be some conditions where you want to mix and match. That's okay. But as a beginner, as a starting point, pick one and try to see if you can solve that problem with one of them. Okay. Whatever the activities are, I can guarantee you can solve each one of them with a single one of these things. Okay. That's how the activities are, so you don't have to worry about it. So the float one, pick the float one and solve the one with the float. So because I'm going to introduce you the last one, which is called position, you can solve, when I show you position, you can solve this one using position as well. Okay. But remember, they are all independent. Concepts are independent. I made a mistake. Please do. It has nothing to do with inline block or everything. Okay. So what is position? Position is similar concepts, similar properties. Display helps you moving around the elements. Float also helps you moving around the elements. Position also does the same thing. Okay. Now, why are there three properties for doing the same thing? Again, when ask this question, if somebody is a graphic designer or something, there are different cases for each one of them. In these activities, you might not come across them, but you should know that there are different properties. Once you do a little bit more coding, more CSS, it will naturally come and you will say, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want. Okay. But what I want you guys to know is that there are different properties. The third one is called position. This is called CSS positioning. Okay. For this one, what I'm going to do is we're going to follow kind of similar example for the box one that we have been following. So I'm going to close this one. I'm going to come over here. So I have a same box, just a different color. And I'm going to show you how you can move this box using CSS position. Okay. So just like display and float, the property is called position. Okay. And you have more than four, but I'm going to cover the first four. Okay. The first one is static. Okay. What does this do? Absolutely nothing. Static is the default behavior for any HTML element with CSS that you have. Static just means this is the default behavior, this is how I created the box, and that's how it is. That's it, right? That's what static is. Again, there is a use case. You might be, when you see other properties, you might want something to be called out specifically saying static, but it does have a use case. But static for our use cases doesn't do anything, but this value exists. What does static do? It's a default behavior. Whatever CSS, whatever div you have, is going to display exactly as it is. Doesn't change the position. Okay, static is not going to change the position. It is going to place the element on its default position. The default position of this box is a div. It's over here with this height, this width. So that's why it just doesn't do anything. Okay. So that's the easy one. The next one is called relative. What relative does is it nudges the element. Remember, I'm using the word nudge. Nudge means you can nudge this element from left, you can nudge this element from the top. When you nudge this or push, what's going to happen? It's going to move like this, right? So that's what relative does. Relative nudges the CSS. For example, I have to declare a position and then I have to tell which direction do I want this to be nudged. For example, I want this to move towards the right, so I'm going to say right 20 px. Oh, left, sorry. Lost my sense of direction. There you go. Okay. So what is going on? Why I said left, but it moved towards the left. So what this property is saying, nudge from the left side. Okay, this is the left one. So it is going to nudge from the left. How much? 20 pixels. 20 pixels from the left. Now if I want to nudge from the top, right, top would be this. So I'm going to nudge from the top, it's going to come down because I'm nudging it from the top. So relative is basically your, let's say 30 px. Okay, so it comes down. Why? I'm nudging it, right? That's what the relative position does. Again, relative on its own doesn't do anything. You need to specify left, bottom, uh, right, and top. Okay.
You can do it all for
Let's see if I think you have to do it separately. There's no. I don't think there's a property for 10px. Might be able to put all of them in the same line like this. Yeah. We'll have to try. I'm not 100% sure, but you might be able to.
What I'm saying is you can't do right and bottom.
Oh, you can do it. You can do all four. Oh, that's what. Oh, yeah. You can do whatever you can do.
Okay, okay.
Now, is it going to behave the way you want? I don't know, but you can do all four of them. It's going to try its best to
It
do
would be
something.
silly to do
Yes,
all
exactly. Yes, yes, exactly. So that's why I didn't put the one, because what is going to happen? You're trying to nudge it from the left, and then you're trying to nudge it from the right. So it probably calculates the difference and comes to a position that it can sense. Okay. So the relative static doesn't do anything. That's the default behavior. Relative, remember, it is the nudging. It is going to push wherever whatever property you have. Static, relative. Now I'm stressing this because the next one is called fixed, and it might seem like relative, but it is different. So the next property is called fixed. Actually, fixed. Okay. So what does fixed do? So I'm going to rewrite this whole thing so that you guys can see position, and this time I'm going to select fixed. Okay, fixed has the same kind of mechanism: top, left, bottom, right. Okay, but see what happens when I say bottom 10. You see what happened? Why did this happen? Fixed goes based on your screen. This screen is called viewport. Technically, this is called a viewport. Okay. You might have come across that word, but this is called a viewport. Viewport just means your browser, the white screen that you see, not the title, not anything. This thing, wherever your HTML renders. So your fixed position takes this 10px and finds where that coordinate is and places it over here.
Is that 10 pixels from the bottom?
That is 10 pixels from the bottom. Okay. So, well, actually, you know what? This is, let me show you what. Let's say if I do 0px and then do right 0px. Let's increase this so that it comes into view. Oops. Let's push this up a bit. Okay. So it goes towards the right. It's basically finding the position based on your viewport versus your relative position. Okay. So that's the difference between a fixed and a relative. Now, fixed, if your page right now it's not responsive, but let's suppose you have a scrolling or something, any element that has a fixed position is always going to remain over here. No matter if you have a scroll or anything, it's not going to move from here. Okay, it is always going to be fixed at that position. That's what fixed does. Yes.
So then it's basically like the 10 px, when you have a 10 px line segment.
Yes.
It's from the bottom to the top.
Right. Is that coordinate system? I don't want to use that word, but yes, it's that's how it is going. The x and y axis. I don't want to scare people with algebra and everything, but that's how it is.
Is that something we're gonna learn in this class? Is it learn how to actually calculate where on the screen those go by pixels?
No. That's you guys will have to learn that. Like, okay, this is how do you position that? You mean like
No, 'cause like right now you guessing you're saying 70 px.
Oh,
and
yes.
everything else.
Yes.
How do we know
Yes.
on the screen?
Right. That's trial and error.
Yes, that's if you're using pixels, that's trial and error. You have to, try a few things and see where it comes out. But eventually, the thing is, this is not as feasible. The properties I'm showing you are individually, right? And actually, it has to be more responsive. It has to take up the width, whatever it is available. If you resize all of this has to, take up that space. So that comes from percentages and few other libraries. We are going to take a look at it, so you won't have to worry about the positioning when it comes to that. Okay, but these are the properties. When we talk about the layouts and everything, we're going to look at Bootstrap. Bootstrap kind of solves a lot of these problems. The only thing is, please remember, Bootstrap is also written in CSS. Somebody actually went down behind the scenes. They are using the same thing. Yes, they have guessed the coordinates. They have done everything, but if you are a graphic designer and anything, you have to come up with those numbers. So Bootstrap makes our life easier, but somebody behind the scene, Bootstrap has actually went and found out this is 760 pixel, this is where it should be. They have done the hard work. But I want to tell you that behind the scenes, these are the same exact properties they're using. There's nothing new. Okay, you can even come up with your library and do it. Okay, but that's the fixed one. Okay, static, relative, fixed. The last one is called absolute. Okay, the absolute one comes into play when you have like a parent-child relationship. Like you have a big box inside a small box, or you have a main page inside your main page. You have smaller sections. Okay, so absolute comes into play with relative. These two kind of go hand in hand together. When you're using absolute, you do need a relative. How does that work? So for that, I'm going to create a. So let's remove this. I'm going to quickly add a bigger box. And I'm going to say class big box, and I'm going to move this box inside this. Does that look right? Yes. Okay. So I don't have the CSS for big box. Let's go ahead and create this. Let's copy this, and I'm going to add change big box. Let's make it a oops. Different color. Okay. Let's make it big so that we can actually see it. 800 and 800 px. Okay. Okay. So remember what does fix do? Fix the space available to fix this whole viewport. Okay. For absolute, you are going to define a space, and then you're going to move that box just within the space. That's where absolute comes in. Okay. Again, for fixed, you have the whole screen, but there might be a case that you don't want to use a full screen. This is your page, and you want to position this relative to only this box, not the whole screen. If you use fixed for this, what is going to happen? This is the whole screen is available to this. Okay, but you don't want that. You want this box to be only positioned inside over here and doesn't go outside. That's where absolute comes in. Okay, so when you create an absolute position, you are going to say this has a position absolute, which is relative to this box over here. Please don't go outside this box. That's what absolute is saying. Okay, how does this work? Um, so my box, I'm going to declare this position as relative. Okay, the parent one, the bigger box or the bigger page is going to have the position relative, and the inner box is going to have an absolute position, and then you can move that around within that. So for example, I will say position absolute. Okay, and then if I move this around, say bottom 10 px, See, now bottom doesn't. If you saw the, remember the fixed one, bottom is 10px over here, but the bottom for this one is now the bottom for this one, whatever 10px over here. Okay, so fixed and absolute kind of similar in the way that for fixed the whole viewport is available. For absolute, the inner one, the parent box or whatever, that's the only thing that is available to this. So you can move around this box with the same coordinates, but it's going to move around only inside this box. Yes.
So if you have like two of like the brown boxes, and you have like two that had things in it, how would it know which box you wanted this like the blue one to be inside?
This HTML. So in my HTML, I'm saying this box
Oh,
is
okay.
inside
Got it.
this. Yes, that's the only way it will know. Otherwise, it won't know. Yes. Oh, did I miss this one? Maybe I should explain. So my big box, my smaller box is inside my bigger box, and this is how it is inside. Okay. So this is the bigger one, and this is smaller one. Okay. Now, if you remember your CSS positioning one, you can solve this with this one also, right? You can have a bigger box. You can do it with float as well, but the only thing still would be that this would be a parent box, and this div has to be inside this box. That's how you would solve it. And then you can do a float left or float right. That will also work. Or you can solve the same thing with positioning as well. Okay, so multiple ways to do the same thing. All right. Any questions? So these are the four properties. Again, yes.
So you can like combine position with flow, so you could do like absolute position and then flow to the left of that box.
Yeah.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would highly recommend give it a try. Again, first try individually. Don't try to mix and match. But yeah, what you are saying seems like you might have some CSS experience. Have you done something?
Oh.
Not at all. Okay.
Just figured.
Try it separately, and then if this is clear, then try to mix and match and see how you would be able to do it. Yes, eventually there might be cases where you'd have to mix and match, but if you try to do it right now, it's going to be confusing and not sure. It's hard to debug as well. Is it the float that is breaking it, or is the position? I don't know what is going on. So try one, make sure you understand how to position this, and then try to see what is going to help you. Okay? All right, so these are the three properties I had. That's all for the lesson. Ethan is going to introduce the homework to you guys before he does it. From Brent's timeline, I think if you are going to drop the course, today is probably the last class. I'm not sure if you are or if you're not. If you are, I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not going to try to convince you to stay. Actually, right now there are 33 students. So if one of you drop, I will have a perfect 32 people with four groups. I'm just joking. Please, I'm joking. Please don't draw. Don't draw. I'm just joking. Okay. It'll be funny, you guys. Somebody is already dropping, and they go to Brent. Well, he wanted one drop, so I volunteered as a tribute. Brent is like, what is going on? Are you running Hunger Games, or this is a class going on? What's going on? Somebody said you volunteered as a tribute. So okay, please don't drop because I want 32 people. But yes, if not, then it has been a pleasure. You can connect me with LinkedIn. Keep in contact. We can mentor. We can talk. It doesn't matter if you're in class or not. Okay. So for the remaining stubborn 33 or whatever remains of you, I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Please go back, redo these activities. Ethan is going to give you homework. You guys are going to freak out, but please calm down. Do the activities, and then also do the homework. Okay. All right.